Hey everybody, it's Leilani with the Magical Solution. I have not been online in a long time. So many things have been going on, so many good things, so many positive things. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be back again and say hello to everybody. How's everyone doing? Leave me a comment, let me know how you're feeling, let me know what's going on. Um, but yeah, so many changes, so many things. I can't keep up with it. And so I've been sort of just either reposting old content or posting drafts that I've had saved up while I'm just sort of working with a few other things. But I'm happy to be here tonight. So Tuesday night is our book club, and this is the time that we will read for about 45 minutes and then answer any questions that you might have for the last 15 minutes. I do this on Tuesdays if I have the ability to. And what we do is that we pick a spiritual text or a philosophical text or just a sacred ancient text, and we read it together and we go through it together and we pick it apart, and people leave comments and I give my take on things. But for the most part, it's a study group, it's a book study. So I encourage people to read the books that we're reading together on your own time if you want to, or go back to my previous videos on YouTube where you can find the books recorded, and you can just simply read along at your own convenience, right? So that's kind of the whole point. So the book that we have been on is entitled The Harmonial Philosophy by Andrew Jackson Davis. Now, the reason why we chose this book this go around is because I have been sort of going through this spiritism, espiritismo series of just discussing, in relevant authors and relevant documents within those communities, so that we can start flushing out um, a little bit more modern day concepts of these things. And that's kind of my goal for all the books that we read, especially when they're old, is how do we put them in today's context, because some shit is outdated and needs to be left in the past, and some stuff has core truth, has core value to it, that is still applicable today. And that is one of, in my personal opinion, one of the criteria for being considered a divine truth or a universal truth, is when that truth can withstand time, right? So as things change, is that core principle, is that core truth still the same across the board? Is it still practice? Is it still something to adhere to, right? Um so anyway, this book, The Harmonial Philosophy, was written in the early to mid 1800s. This was during a time, this was an author named Andrew Jackson Davis here in New York. And so this is right around the time of a lot of intellectual movements sweeping across Europe and the Americas. This is around the time of the Fox sisters as well, around the time of spiritualism, around the time of hypnotism and mesmerism, just around the time of the exploration of the human stuff, the human abilities that are reported by people but not necessarily measured by people. And so this was the era of sort of measuring these unseens, right? And so Andrew Davis Jackson at this time was someone who echoed a lot of the same ideas as many of his contemporaries, and also a few of his influences, right? And so in terms of adding originality to anything, he didn't really do much to that extent, to adding to the science of anything. But he did do, he did add a lot of spiritualist context. He was definitely much more of a philosopher than he was like a mathematician or you know what I mean? Like, this was a very simple man. He did not have a lot of education, and he did not consider himself a medium. And so this was just a simple dude who, like your average Joe Schmo, who just got interested in certain things, and he was fascinated by certain authors, and he just wanted to dive deep in it. And that's really, it's such a relatable story. And so that was another reason why I wanted to choose him for our book club, aside from the fact that he's one of the biggest influences within spiritualism and spiritism. We are on, what chapter are we on? Let us share screen so that we can see what we are doing here. Those of you who are watching me on TikTok, first of all, thank you so much for watching me on TikTok. However, if you do want to read along with me, I highly encourage you to head on over to my YouTube, my Facebook, at The Magical Solution, so that you can read along with me. As much as I want to get my views up on TikTok, I understand that the visual is much, much more important. So please just give me a thumbs up in the comments section if you can see my screen, because right now it does say that I'm sharing screen. So I just want to make sure you guys can see it. Okay. And in the meantime, those of you who are choosing to stay with me here on TikTok, thank you so much. Where are you watching from? How are you feeling tonight? Are there any spiritual things that you're interested in that you'd like me to try and tie the message to? There's no sound? Okay, hold on one second. All right. Is there sound now? Is there sound now? Can you hear it? Let me know. There you go. Thank you, baby. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I just said a whole bunch of shit. I just said a whole bunch of things y'all weren't even hearing. So wow, damn, I'm so sorry. I will ask you all on TikTok to just simply go back and watch the replay of just the first like 5 minutes of our recording, because there was a lot of backstory as to why I started this book club, why this particular author and this particular book is important within the spiritualist, spiritist, and espiritismo community. And what I do as a content, as a reader of these books, and why I do it. Another piece that I left out is that I actually started this book club because I am neurodivergent myself. I have a very difficult time focusing, a very difficult time reading, especially out loud. I have a lot of like learning issues that I've had to overcome by myself, because I was a late diagnosis. I actually did not get diagnosed until I joined TikTok, actually. So in the early 2020s was when I said, oh my God, this is a thing. And I've worked in the mental health field my whole career, and I never saw myself as that. When I learned about all of these things, when I got these degrees and all of these things, I always looked at it from the observer standpoint. That's how I look at everything. I always see everything from the outside. And so I never put myself in that. Whereas all the other kids in the college would all have like, hypochondriac type things where they're like, oh my God, I have this and I have that, and I think I'm schizophrenic, and I think I'm this and I think I'm that. Like, they read the DSM-4 and they like freak out, right? And I remember just being like, no, this is a study. This is just what we're studying. So, obviously I didn't notice my own issues, and growing up in a Latin family, and, growing up in New York, these types of issues were just not really like talked about. It was just like, just focus, just get it together. Just, sit your ass down, or calmate, or, whatever you needed to do. And if that meant, getting your ass kicked, you got your ass kicked, and that's how you sat still, and that's how you focus. Like, that was it. And so it wasn't until when I started seeing on TikTok, like, that there are those nuances within the different communities, Black communities, Hispanic communities, Asian communities, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I even see some things, even with my husband in the Indian community, you can see the different cultural upbringings of how they address someone with certain learning disabilities or certain, mental health issues or whatever. And those need to be taken into context for accurate diagnosis. And that was what my issue was. And so here I am, a couple years later, I said, you know what, let me start a book club because I know that this was something that I struggled with. And I know that it's something people need. And I know that it would be helpful. You know what I mean? And if it's not your bag, if I'm not your cup of tea, definitely no shade. I'm not feeling no type of way. There are definitely other people out there who read books, and especially books that might have more of an interest to you. But there's also people reading the Spiritists, reading these scriptures and reading all of these different things. So I'm not the only one. And so I always encourage people to just go with what works with them, right? I guess people like me because I tend to go off on these little tangents. Right, we find a subject, or we nibble on a certain idea from the book, and like now I'm off on this other on this other tangent over there, and it's just like, no, Leilani, stay focused. But yeah, so that's why we did it. That's why we're here. And I appreciate all of you guys for showing up every Tuesday when I'm on, or just kind of keeping the eye on the pulse, keeping the eye on the Magical Solution to see what I'm up to, and for joining my newsletter and my email lists and stuff like that, because I have to follow a schedule. I have to, and don't I don't like canceling or rescheduling. It does bother me. And so to be able to put it out in a newsletter for you guys to see what I'm doing and where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be talking about, is helpful for everybody, as opposed to just if you catch me on the fly, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's get back to it, right? So I talked your ear off for 15 minutes. I'm going to give you an extra 15 minutes on the end, okay? So let's do it. So Andrew Jackson Davis, right? So we are now on the chapter entitled The Soul in Man. Okay. So up to this point, we have been talking about planetary souls, cosmic soul, the essence, the divine mind, uh, harmony of the spheres, like a lot of more cosmetology, theology, philosophy in that sense. Now we're going to get more into the internal relationship, right? So as above, so below kind of energy. So now we're entering this piece. It is necessary to classify the parts of the soul in order to conceive the relation which they sustain to each other and their correspondence with end, cause and effect. The end or ultimate design is always the cause, which cause institutes an effect, and both these are engaged in accomplishing the end. Okay? The soul is composed of three distinct parts, being love, will, and wisdom. Okay? Why does my thing keep doing this? There we go. Love is the first or rudimental element of the soul. It is that liquid, mingling, delicate, inexpressible element felt in the depth of every human spirit, because it is the germinal essence. Germinal essence. I love this. I love this definition of love. Like, listen to that again. You ready? Love is the first or rudimental element of the soul. It is that liquid, mingling, delicate, inexpressible element felt in the depth of every human spirit, because it is the germinal essence. Germinal essence. Ooh. Now, will is a living force which serves as the connecting medium between love and wisdom. And it is the subject to the influence and suggestions of each. Okay, I think that's a given, right? So this is, but before I say it's a given, let me also sort of s- suggest that the will, when they say it's a living force, they mean something in motion. Remember what the original cosmology was. Remember what he was talking about in the earlier chapters. He was saying how the laws of the cosmos, one of them is motion, right? So when we talk about that now on a micro scale, right? Because that was as above, now we're dealing with as below, right? When we're talking about it on a micro scale, now we're talking about that living vital force. That's what we're talking about. And that living vital force, which we call the will, is what pushes us forward. That is our momentum. That is our motivation. That is our inspiration. That is the passion. That is the desire. That is the fire. That is the sacral chakra. That is all of that, right? So when we're talking about the will, that is what we're saying here. And that it is a medium between love and wisdom, emotions and mind, physical and spiritual, right? Like it is, motion is what keeps the thing going, right? And so as part of our makeup, it is an innate consciousness of energy, okay? Because that will is being informed by both love and wisdom. However, it still has its own innate free will, its own innate choice to make between these two things, or whether or not to consider these two things, okay? Consciously. I mean, it has to consider them no matter what, like biologically, but consciously, there is a choice there, right? And then, of course, the last one, wisdom. Wisdom is the perfection of love, the sealing element of the human soul, and the establishment of the soul's perfect constitution. Wisdom flows from love. It's directed by experience. It is modified by will and rendered perfect by knowledge. Wisdom is the thinking principle, the faculty which explores the fields of terrestrial and celestial existence. It analyzes, calculates, and commands obedience from all subordinate possessions of will and love. Okay? So, this is what we call our crown jewel, right? The crown, the ori, the highest mind, the whatever, the higher self, whatever you want to call this energy that is the crown of human expression. That thing flows, is a direct result of the love that is rooted within it, right? And as love passes through the body and is put into motion through the actions of the will, okay, filtered through all of the knowledge, right? It is then perfected, diluted, not diluted, but perfected, refined, right, into the wisdom that is necessary for elevation, enlightenment, all the things, all the things, okay? Love, being the first element or the essence of the soul, is imperfect and unguided. And I think that that's an interesting thing for them to say here. I'm gonna read further, but before I do, I think it's an interesting thing for them to say here, for Andrew to say here, because in a lot of mystical traditions, love is the divine thing. Like love is the thing that is like that you seek attainment of, or you seek union with, or you seek for that energy to permeate through you, etc., etc., right? But in here, this element is a base element. This element is an imperfect, unguided element. It doesn't say that it is bad. Notice the language. It's not talking about it being a bad thing, an evil thing. It's simply saying that it is an essence in its rawest, most imperfect form. It's moving wild, it's unguided, but that doesn't mean it's bad, right? Love is a very pure essence and it's unfettered, it's unfiltered, right? And so we're going to now move into sort of how that works within this context. So on the one hand, it is the parent of impulse, fantasy, eccentricity, and inflated conceptions. But then on the other hand, it is the parent of tenderness, kindness, affection, attachment, all pure and unsophisticated sentiments springing from inward depths and expressed in language, music, and art. It conceives all loveliness, gentleness, sweetness in their various modes of manifestation. It is exhibited especially in in conjugal attachments, out of which there arises that love for mankind generally, which begets families and associations. It has yearnings for the invisible and sublime, finding outward expression in ideal conceptions clothed in words, infusing chastity and refinement and amiability into all other affections. Love has also an attraction for self, sometimes expressed by unrighteous plans for self emolument, by deception, and by destruction of life, by all those unsanctified and corrupt inventions which, through misdirection of such love, prevail throughout the human brotherhood. But love involves also unbound benevolence, finding expression in mighty movements for the amelioration of mankind and the ultimate embellishment of distributive justice and universal righteousness. It has furthermore an affection for what is just, expressed by relations, by conscientious relations between man, and by reciprocity. Woo! Crazy. So right here, it just gave you the truth and all the good, bad, and ugly regarding the essence of love, what this element actually is, and how it plays out within the human spirit. And what they're saying here is that because love is the base core element that is found in every living thing, it is that vital force, right? However, because it's unrefined, because it's unguided, that love can manifest in very ugly ways, right? So we've seen the virtues of love, and the virtues of love are the things that pretty much all the religions are based on, right? Like they talk about sort of this, rising into love sort of energy, if you will, right? But what they never talk about is the sort of the ugly side of love, which is still love, right? And still needs to be loved as such, right? And these are the things that love has expressed when it's unfiltered and unregulated, which is things like obsessions, things like possession, things like what did they even list here? There's so many things. They talk about, ooh, I went too far. You know, eccentricity, impulses, inflated conceptions, right? So these are all things that love at its core can outwardly show in a person who does not have that tamed. And this is why you'll see so many people say things like, you must have a love for yourself. You must understand the love and refine the love within yourself before you attempt to love someone else, because you can only love them at the capacity that you're able to love. You can receive, and you may be receiving it in a shallow way, because again, to truly comprehend that, you must have lived it or understood it to be such. And so, because it's your core essence, that potentiality is there, but not many people have those experiences, unfortunately. Not many people are nurtured, not many people are loved. And so they don't have the capacity to understand that until it happens to them someday, or until they do it for themselves somehow, right? And so that's what this is all about, and how it expresses within you. And also within community too. So like when we talk about, you know, taking this love and utilizing it in a communal way for mankind, this is one of the most powerful and quickest ways to set community and relationships between one group and another way ahead of the next. So this is the love of the moral, righteous, and holy. It conceives all divine perfection. It aspires toward the divine mind and those exalted sentiments which are the highest attributes of man. Love also gives birth to hope, clothed in contemplation and expectancy of things desired by the other affections of its nature. From the faculty of love, as basis of the soul, flows that of will, which becomes the meteoral, the mediatoral, the meteor, the mediator. um, he becomes the mediator instrument of the human mind, employed to encompass those ends that love desires. Right. Herein are made plain the three moving principles engaged in the attainment of ends. 1. Love conceives that which is congenial to its affections. It prompts the will to act in order to accomplish the end. And the will is therefore love's means. You see that? You see how it broke it down like that? Um, So the will is a living force which evolves thoughts suggested by the workings of love and expresses them in manifest forms, in movements of the body, and in all external actions. Okay. So, what he's talking about here, I really need you to get this. Love conceives that which is congenial to its affections. Okay. So, what love desires will it will attract to itself, and it will also instigate the will to move towards, right? But when you're moving from an unfiltered, unguided, impulsive love essence, then your affections, the things that you want to draw in, are not going to be of your highest good, right? So this is a very important thing to understand in terms of how this essence moves in the body and how will assists it. Okay? And this is why the will is love's means, by and by any means necessary, right? Hi my honey, thank you for watching me. You're so cute. Um so oh, now you got me all messed up. Go away. What was I saying? What was I saying? So this is where we see issues like okay, I love you, bye. This is where we see issues like addictions and um impulsive behaviors, reaction, like very very um big burst out reactions that are disproportionate to the problem, et cetera, right? So these are all still behaviors that are rooted in the essence of love, but a love that has been unguided, a love that has been misguided, a love that has been beaten down. And so the actions of this person reflects the love that they have for themselves, the love and the essence that exists within themselves, right? And so this is how we heal people. This is how we heal ourselves, is to address the love issues that we have. This is why it's so important to analyze the relationships that you've had in your life, because every single relationship, both on an individual measure and in a communal setting, is going to impact that base core essence, that love essence that they're talking about here, which will impact your willpower and your actions and your behaviors and how you manifest things for yourself. Do you see now how it's so important to understand the spiritual anatomy of the body? Because when you start to understand the spiritual anatomy of the body, you understand how you do the things you do and why you do the things you do. Because to be honest with you, it's not that fucking deep. Like, it's not that deep. Like, my husband tells me all the time, like, Leilani, stop overthinking, like, when I have a problem, instead of just facing the fact that, like, this is just the problem and these are the actions that led me to this problem, I'll be like, oh, there's this deeper meaning and there's this, like, all this other stuff, and he's like, stop, that's not, no. And that's what we're talking about here, is that at the core of everything, it's this base essence that we are functioning from. Our movement and our vital energy is pulled from this place, and so that must be the first place that we address when we are dealing with our own personal healing and when we are dealing with the responsibility of having communion and relationship with others. Right? Okay, moving on off my pedestal. Thank you. Um, so, will is the living force which evolves thoughts suggested by the workings of love and expresses them in manifest forms, in movements of the body, and in all external actions. As it does not institute any movement of itself, but works only as an excited and prompted. Okay, your willpower must be excited and prompted, for it has no inertia on its own, right? It has inertia. Sorry, I said that the wrong way, but you get what I'm saying. And that the love is what that fuels it. And so, see how this anatomy starts to also make sense? So people who are having issues with self-love, people who are falling into deep depressions, notice how these things will affect your willpower. You will want to sleep all the time, you'll want to disassociate, you'll want to not move around. That it's because that excitement is not there to push the thing forward, right? When you really think about it, when you really do something that you enjoy doing, I want you to kind of think back to something that you really enjoy doing and kind of look at yourself doing that thing. And what you'll notice is that it almost feels like there's a cord or there's something pulling you to the thing that you enjoy doing. And it's like, it's just keeping you there. And once that cord latches onto that thing, it becomes this really cool loop of you giving it energy, and then it gives you energy because you're doing it. And it's just like, oh, and it's just this feed of just wonderfulness, right? Now imagine if that shit was unguided. It's still love. It's still love impulse. It's still love essence energy, base energy. But now it's misguided, and that cord is now latched on to a toxic person. It's now latched on to a drug. It's now latched on to a thing, and that feed is still there because it's the feed of that love vibration that is at a certain vibration, right? So that's what we're talking about here, right? This is like, it can get so deep on paper, but when you put it into practical matters, when you actually explain it in a way that, oh, I can deal with this day to day, it's really not that deep. It really isn't. Um okay. The third faculty of the soul is evolved from will and love. Okay? It is the highest and most perfect, joining and pervading the others so that the three form a perfect whole. This faculty is wisdom. The office of wisdom is here to suggest to the suggestions of love and will, and to modify them according to reason, form, order, and humanity. Love without will would be eccentric, impulsive, disorderly, and when so modified, it is held within a definite sphere. But love and will would both be eccentric and ungoverned among material things were it not for the presence of wisdom, which presides over and directs both. Wisdom is contained in love as a germ of the soul. It is then developed in its body, which is the will, and perfected in its own flower. It is the crowning faculty of the soul, the most perfect of all its attributes. It gives order and form to all things in the outer world, and the further its sphere of action is extended, the more will the world displays, the more the will, the more will the world displays beauty and harmony. the more it will re- the more it is restricted, there we go, in its actions, and the less it dictates are heeded, the more will nature and man's artificial creations become disorganized and useless instead of displaying peace, beauty, and reciprocity. So I love this sentiment, but again, this sentiment does not really add anything new to sort of the field of intelligence at the time that this was written, right? So when we're talking about philosophies and religions of the time, there is this very mind centric thing going on, right? So the head, the mind, the brain is above everything else. Consciousness is above everything else. Like it's very, emotions, bad, bad, bad. Body, shame, 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 bad, bad, bad. But mind, good, 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 right? So like there was a very clear pedestal and holiness that they gave mind. Um, but please understand that what they're talking about here is a holistic system. This is what needs to be understood. Yes, it is the crowning jewel, as in it is that conscious energy that is able to then inform the rest of the body. So the information doesn't just go upwards, it also goes back down, is what I'm trying to say, is what I'm trying to express to you through this text. So the love, the base love energy that we're talking about, right, is has wisdom innate within it, but it's unrefined, it's unguided, right? So through life experiences, it comes up through this, and we're talking the Kundalini stuff, right? So by the time it gets to this sacral chakra, this heart chakra space, right? This is where we start to see action, will, motivation, movement, inspiration, all the things that drive us and push us forward, and all the passions that provide the oomph and the fire that we need to do whatever it is that we are being pulled to do, right? And that pull that is coming from down here and up and out is what then gives us lessons, right? So right now we're just talking about that internal stuff, but he has in here, if you read between the lines, he has in here what that looks like when it is happening within community as well. And he's showing you both sides here. He is saying when we're in community, if we do this wisdom, allowing wisdom to inform what it is that we're experiencing, meaning try and make as little mistakes as possible as you grow up throughout life. And when you do fuck up in life, make sure you learn from it and don't do it again so you keep going forward, right? Like that's the whole point of this system. And he's saying if we can do that, we can move from a place of being in accordance with nature, having beauty around us, having reciprocity around us. You know what I'm saying? But if we don't do that, if we just do it based on our base nature and we never filter it out from the crown jewel, from that place that is informed by divine wisdom, then it stops here and it never goes up the chain to then get worked and brought back down for those actions to change, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Now, the great divine mind is love in essence, light and life of the universe. The universe is the body of love and its perfect form. But wisdom is the highest attribute and the great ultimate of eternal design. Here, then, are the three parts of the universal system: the divine mind or divine love, and this is the soul, right? The soul, the universe, which is form, it's the means, it's the mediator, it's the body. And then we have the spirit, which is the order, the wisdom, and the grand design of the entire system. The end primarily designed was individualization of the human spirit, and for the attainment of which cause and effect were brought into requisition. This truth is demonstrated in every department of the terrestrial sphere, but it's particularly exemplified in let me go down to this next page, in the nature and developments of the human soul, which are in exact correspondences with the great system of the universe. Pause. We need to talk about that because that was a very serious statement. That was like, boom. Okay. We need to talk about that really quick. Okay. So, what they're saying here, these three elements of the whole cosmology of the harmonial sphere, okay? The three elements are the divine mind, divine love, the essence, the dark mother, the void, the stuff that is beyond measure, that even trying to give it a name is just blasphemous in that sense, right? So like that. Then you have the soul, right, which is sort of the form, the means at which this other divine mind is able to express itself, right? And then you have the spirit, which is the wisdom and the order of said universe, right? This wisdom is the same wisdom that is rooted in the same love essence that is at the very beginning, which we call divine mind, divine love. So we're talking about that like drop of the ocean type of situation, right? So like you are the ocean, you just have a drop in you, like that, the metaphor, the metaphor, okay? But my point is that that's what we're talking about. And so essentially what they're saying in this cosmology is that because of that, we function in the same way that this system that he talked about internally functions, where our base actions, we are love essence, our actions within the cosmic universe, right, will come back up to divine, like it's that elevation process, right? In the physical body, it is the same thing. It is the same thing. So hopefully I made sense with that, but that's a pretty serious to say that like we as conscious beings or the universe as an intelligence is essentially responsible for its own destiny. Like it's essentially saying that it created itself through this movement, through this desire from love to love itself. The motion of love wanting to love itself. What? But yes, that's essentially what they're saying here, okay? Um that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. All right. Now, so everything is perpetually displaying in its inward and outward movements, right? As above, so below, and cause and effect. Now, light and life are love. They represent order and form, and order and form are wisdom. So light and life are love, and order and form are wisdom. Hence, it is highly necessary that mind should comprehend the great truth that nothing exists in the outer world except as produced and developed by an interior essence, of which the exterior is the perfect representation of. Okay? Boom. That's literally everything in a nutshell is boom right here. Okay? It becomes such a spiral into infinite nothingness that you just end up back where you are. And that essentially is uh the idea of spiritualism. That is essentially it. Like it's funny because the questions that I get a lot is, well, what's the point? Like what's the point of elevating? Like what when we finally get to that highest, most like the highest we could possibly get, what then? And it's like, do you not see that there is no end? And I think that's really scary for some people. I think that's really, really scary for some people, is that there is no end. We end this. This is the spiral. And each lifetime is, are you going to spiral upwards or spiral downwards? Are you going to spiral inward or spiral outward? Are you going to play the game, or are you just going to exist? Right? So this is the big question. And I think when we look at a lot of these theories that they talk about here, like our spiritual anatomy, the different layers, love, willpower, wisdom, we're talking about a methodology. All of these religions are methodologies, really. They're systems for ways of life that essentially bring you to God, or essentially bring you to self, or essentially bring you to a promised land of some kind. And whether it's metaphor or literal, whether it's someplace out there or someplace in here, what ends up being the core of it is that it's never ending. It's always just going to be that. So knowing these anatomies really help you to gain more control and not be so what's the right word, contingent on the whims of everything and everyone. It's important to be observant of those things. It's important to move in a way that will ensure your survival, and that you do so without harming anyone. And if you have extra, to help your neighbor, right? So we don't want to be a dick, but at the same time, it's going to be what it's going to be, because everyone is moving from that place, is from that base emotion, from that base place that they have not unfiltered, they have not purified it, they haven't put it through that process of refinement and alchemized their traumas, their experiences, to help them move differently. Right? Because it's one thing to talk about being love and light, it's another thing to move in love and light. Do you get what I'm saying? So like the whole thing, and just not to, I'm not getting political or anything like that, but like with regards to being about something 1 minute, but then when an option comes up that's much more convenient to your own personal wants and desires, now you're not about that thing anymore, that other thing anymore, right? That type of stuff is important to flush out within yourself. Where are you moving from? And if it's something that's fickle and goes with the wind like this, then you need to ask yourself, like, how is that contributing? Because your actions are going to contribute to the collective, whether you want them to or not. Even your inaction contributes to the collective, whether you believe that or not. It just does. That's just the law of nature, right? So you got to ask yourself, what kind of impact do you want to make? Um, yeah, man, I'm telling you, this is a wild chapter. This is a wild chapter because he's trying. Because let's not forget, the everything prior to this chapter was about cosmology. Was about the planetary stuff, how things came into existence, the laws of nature, the laws of divine. So everything up to this chapter. Now this chapter is just all of a sudden diving super deep in our spiritual anatomy and the laws of our anatomy, but doing so that ties it back to the cosmology that he was talking about in those previous chapters. That's like a huge thing to take on. So please understand that, like, I'm going to try my best to give you examples, but like, this is serious. This is pretty crazy. Anyways, so among the various arts and sciences, there may be found demonstrations of this truth and its importance. Every form invented by man represents that inward thought which is cause of its creation. So, also, every form corresponds to the inward suggestion of love. It is created by the living effort of the will and modified and perfected by the direction of the wisdom. Every form, everything. Essentially, spiritualism is saying there in this context, essentially, is that we are channels and vessels of divine mind, divine love mind, that works through us, through our love essence. And our work here is to refine that love essence so that it then returns back to divine mind, right? So essentially there's a fall there. Essentially, like, we're quote unquote fallen angels in that. And it's not even fallen as a bad thing. It's a curiosity, again, it is love wanting to experience loving itself. It's divine mind wanting to interact with itself, through these expressions, through us. And it's a playful thing. It is a playful, blissful thing. But his creations, us, have this will, have this free power to do as we will. And we tend to manifest that in very strange ways, unfortunately. And that's why you see the wars that we are in now and the things that we are going through now. So that was the soul body. just to give you a heads up, that whole chapter was just about the soul body and the anatomy of the soul body and how that functions, right? So now this next chapter is going to be the spiritual body, and we're going to talk about that breakdown. But before we do that, I'm going to open the floor up to any questions, and I'm going to go back and read the Cliff's Note, not the Cliff's Notes, but you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying? There it is. Those little guys at the footnotes. The footnotes, okay? So this is where he was talking about the qualities of the soul, right? Where he talks about it being composed of love, will, and wisdom when he first introduces us to the rudimental element. Okay. So what it says here is that this came out from his book, The Principles of Nature, and that we see in this section what is called the soul in man was subsequently termed spirit by Davis, the soul part being identified with the physical body. It is obvious that these faculties are, or qualities rather than parts or elements. Davis mentions elsewhere that the faculties thought to compose the various portions of the soul, but more correctly, the moral makeup, have been minutely classified under general divisions of propensities, sentiments, and intellectual faculties. The first of these are represented as relating to self and to things in the outer world. The second as giving rise to moral conceptions and the sense of justice, and the third as comprising the powers of reason, analysis, and investigation. So it's important to to take that footnote seriously, because we did kind of leave that out. The soul. So remember how we were saying that the love energy, that love essence, that base energy that we're talking about here, this is that intelligence that it innately has, is intelligence regarding, justice, moral conceptions, reason, analysis, and investigation. It has the propensity and the potential of all those things, right? But it must be filtered through wisdom for those propensities to manifest themselves. And that's what we learned later on in the chapter. Compare innumerable counter statements throughout the collected workings, and love is the germ principle and essence of life. Wherever you behold life, there is love. Life issues from a deific fountain, meaning in all its simplicity that God is love. Okay? It follows from this hypothesis the essence of the soul is a divine essence. Okay? Another footnote here talks about it is testified otherwhere that pure will exercise for pure purpose can overcome all forms of diabolism, disease, vices, and every manner of bad thought. On the other hand, an evil will is the highest expression of that which is called the devil. It being understood that the last term is, for Davis, merely a figure of speech. Those who would know the plenary bliss of angels should allow their will to do that only which is prompted by their higher affections and approved by their highest reason. Okay? So here's where they talk about that duality, right? So, and this is where they tied it back. And that's why I was saying that this chapter is interesting, because it's doing its best to tie it back to, what do you call it? To that original divine mind, that original divine essence, right? And by tying it back, what it's saying is that the minute that God, love, divine mind, whatever you want to call it, the force, the minute that that essence decided to act in a way to express itself in order to experience loving itself, the minute it decided to do that, duality was born. And so love became a lesser version of itself, right? And so now you see love as being love that is purified and divine, and love that has not been refined yet. And therefore, people have the choice to move from one of those places, but it's a place irregardless. I'm going to say that for my people, it's a place regardless of whether you want it there or not, because we all have that within us. Everyone has that you wouldn't be alive if you didn't have that essence within you, essentially, is what is being said here. But that essence is unrefined, right? And so therefore, expressions of love can also be looked at devilishly, and understood as, evil, and the will kind of putting that out into its expression, right? Okay. So now we get into wisdom. We break down wisdom a little bit further here in the footnotes. It says here that wisdom is an effect of the full and harmonious development of all the affinities, affections, and attractions which constitute the soul and adorn its fair proportions. Knowledge is acquired and superficial, but wisdom is unfolded and intuitional. Unfolded and intuitional. Unfolded and intuitional. You can attain knowledge from books. You can attain knowledge from elders. You can attain knowledge from life experiences. But wisdom is something that is unfolded out before you. And then you are guided through that wisdom with your intuition. You move from that space. There's a huge difference. And that unfolding it can be prompted by a book, a teacher, a life experience, a memory, sure. but it can also be from that place, right? Of love moving from love, from wisdom. It is difficult to understand how this classification presented itself to the author's mind, or how it can be put into logical sequence by the reader, and it is ridiculous to distinguish the plan contained within the divine mind as a spirit calling for consideration separately from the mind itself. It is obvious that there are and can only be the intelligence which designs and the design produced, which in the case at issue is the universe. This is not a means or a mediator, for it is the sum total of the manifestation, and there is no third thing to which it can mediate. That's the footnote. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Wisdom, intuition, and reason are said in another work to be the words of the same import, and the statement is an instance of a tendency on the part of Davis to make synonyms by force. So basically this commenter is saying that wisdom, intuition, and reason, that Davis makes a habit of sort of listing things out and making those associations and making them synonymous with each other, even though they are very different words with very different definitions. But he puts them together and makes them synonymous by force in this context. And to note that also that wisdom is called the spiritual sanctuary, the mountain of the Lord, the true savior of man. It is above clairvoyance because it is self-illuminated. Ooh, yes, sir. All right. So, any questions? How are we doing? Any questions? Hey, Big Russ. Oh, thank you so much. It's good to see you, man. It's good to see you again. What is my opinion of unconditional love? My opinion of unconditional love. Yeah, that is divine love. That is divine love. Unconditional love is divine love. It is essentially the best expression of divine love that we currently have in our human nature right now, is unconditional love. It's the best representation we can give and the best action that we can do that represents our divine nature and our connection to God, if that's something that you wish to have, or that's something that you wish to aspire to. But ultimately, unconditional love is an action that is a win-win action for everyone involved when applied and received in reciprocity. Because again, what they talk about here in this chapter specifically is this idea of congenial love, right? This love that is reciprocated. It's not something that you're chasing. It's not something that eludes you. It's not something that gives you the runaround. It's not something that leads you on or misleads. It is always available, always attainable, and simply something that needs to just be moved into and walked from. And so that's really what, in my opinion, what unconditional love is, and how we can utilize it in our world. And that best is done in simple actions. The simple action might be, helping a little old lady across the street. It might be, helping the old man bring his groceries up the stairs. It might be, assisting a disabled individual from their seat to their wheelchair if they need it. Just being a good community member is an very easy way to apply these actions of unconditional love. And not because, hold on one second, you guys are going to see my armpits, but oh my God, I got to do one of those things. Okay. Sorry, TikTok. I had to do one of those things to see that, to make sure that I wasn't like a robot. What was I saying? Oh man. But yeah, so those are like some of the easiest ways to do it. Then there's just, unconditional love in terms of, showing up for people, being loyal, and showing up for people when they need you. But again, congenial love, reciprocal love needs to be in place. This is not a free for all right now, because we understand the state of the world. Like, we understand that not everyone is in a place to give. You know what I mean? And so just give when you can, and if you can, and to remember that giving and being loving does not necessarily have to be a material thing, right? It's about sharing burdens. It's about lending an ear. It's about giving a sweet word, giving a hug, um, babysitting, walking a dog sitting, car sitting for someone, just simple, simple things, that can bring some fulfillment to someone's life, or to make someone else's life just a little bit easier for that day, right? Um, and those are actions that if everyone were doing them, the same thing. If a million people donated $1 every, you'd have $1 million. Like, it really is just small acts of kindness. Unconditional love essentially is being present in those small acts of kindness and not expecting anything back. Oh, yeah, we have boundaries. Yeah, we need to know who and what. We need to know that. Yeah, absolutely. There's safety measures to the world that we live in. Absolutely. But in terms of, knowing that they're unable to pay you back, or knowing that's fine too, you know? Of course. Any other questions? How are you guys feeling? Thank you so much, TikTok, for all the little hearts and loves. I appreciate that. I really do. All right. Well, since there are no more questions, I just want to say thank you guys so much for stopping by. Make sure you guys go to my website to sign up for my email list, right? I do not spam emails. I give you 2 emails a month, one on the 1st and one on the 15th, and that's it. You don't hear from me. So, please just sign up, because in those emails you get freebies, you get coupons, you get things, you get information before other people get information. And it's definitely one of those things that you'll enjoy having a subscription to. I promise you that. And what else? What else? Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe this video. Um, and stay tuned. I'm going to be starting a new blog series on my website that I think people are going to be really excited about. And I just hope that people stop by to read those articles. And yeah, anywho, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you all. Have a beautiful, wonderful Tuesday night. Hopefully, I'll see you next week. If I don't, you already know the deal. We'll see each other soon. All right. Have a good night, everyone. And make sure you never forget